minion before we start?
No.
We've got minion online as well.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah. Well. Good morning. Oh, good Shabbos. How beautiful to be here this morning. It's strange. I think this is the first time I've walked into the room and checked the thermostat. And the temperature in the room is way below where the thermostat is set. Usually you walk in here and it's like 75 and it's got to cool down. At some point I'll switch it over to being the heat is on. Right now it feels okay. But at home too, that difference between, it's one of those few days that we get where no heat or AC has to be on, where it's just nice in the house, nice in the shul. We'll get a little bit later to the story of Noah's Ark and to the Tower of Babel, more so the Tower of Babel today than Noah's Ark. That's what we're reading a little bit more from. But for now, we're going to do some introductory prayers. Just get us ready for the morning. You wake up, you're a little bit groggy. Maybe you've had your waffles, maybe you've had your coffee, maybe you've gotten yourself up a little bit. For the first few minutes of prayer, just to wake ourselves up and get us ready for what comes next. So we're in our blue Siddur on page 140. If you're joining us online, you all know where we are online, but if you're joining us online in the Red Seal, we're on page 101 with Matovu. I'm so excited to have Bill up here with me. And so if I call a page, you go, oh, actually, can we do something else? You have that kind of right. I'll announce the Matbeya that we usually do, and if at some point you go, I'm going to skip this one, I'm going to add this one.
Okay, it's nicely flexible, but I think I've got it worked out until the Torah.
Great, wonderful. We'll be with Matovu.
Okay.
Matovu Havarecha Yaakov, Mishkatecha Yisrael, V'hani Baruchasecha, Avodetecha, Eshtachaveh, El Michal V'Yivatecha, V'anachti Me'om Beitecha, U'Mechol Mishkan Kevodecha, V'hani Eshtachaveh, Evrecha Lifnei Anasi, V'hani Tefilati, V'Shadmai Ratzon, V'hani Baruchasecha, Amen.
Those who are able, please rise for the morning blessings, the morning brachot. We're on page 146, page 146 in the blue Siddur. If you're joining us online, on page 103.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'shach b'dinaha, mehalchim b'yom u'b'layla.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'tzamo.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani ben chori.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, pokei chibri.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, mabi sharmi.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asuri.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, zokech kefrifi.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, rokah haaretz hamayim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'kol tzarki.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher hechim mitzadikav.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'kulam.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifarah.
Amen.
Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoter la'ayat kol.
Amen. Every morning you may be seated. Every morning we try to learn something new. Every day we try to learn something new. As we say thank you to God for teaching us every day, for opening up our minds, even when we're not in school, to learn something Interesting. And in just a moment, we'll invite Benny up to share some words with us on something that he's learned this morning. We'll return to page 152 or online page 107 to say the blessing for learning new things. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah ha'arev na Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu u'b'fi amcha beit Yisrael v'nihiyeh anachnu v'tze'etzaenu v'tze'etza'e amcha beit Yisrael kulanu yodei shemecha v'lomdei Toratecha lishma Baruch atah Adonai Amalamed Torah le'amot Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'charmanu mikol ha'amim v'natamanu et Torato Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you to the group to have the opportunity to speak to you about what we learned. It was very interesting and fascinating learning with Rabbi Schechter this morning. As a matter of fact, we just read the 14 blessings, and those were the ones that we were studying more in depth. So it turns out that if you read them, there's so much more underneath them. There's so much more to unpack them. And Rabbi Schechter told a story that when he was young, his grandfather brought him to shul early in the morning because there was one of the congregants that wanted to be starting to do the brachot before everybody else, because it's in Talmud that say that you should say Amen to 100 blessings for a day. So this older man, he had like lined up people to be, so he could say Amen, and they read these blessings, the 14 blessings, person after person, and then he could say Amen to them, so he could add up his daily portion of the 100 Amen. And so it's an important blessings we read, and what Rabbi Schechter has done is he has written some you can say poems or meditations to each of the 14 blessings. And we went through all 14, but I thought I'll just take one of them for you today, because basically he thought that the 14 blessings can be divided in 2 sets of 7. And if you focus on one of them per day, you might be more appreciative of everything that God does to you, and waking up in the morning is one of them. And then we have that more as a meditation for the day. And then you can go and focus on the second one the second day, and you rotate every other week then those blessings to make them more poignant than they are. So our first blessing that we read upon hearing the sound of well, it's actually in our book, we just read it, you can look in the Siddur, and it says here, we offer praise to you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, for bestowing the ability to distinguish between day and night. So that's our translation. But in the Talmud and other translations, you will find that upon hearing the sound of a rooster, you shall recite, blessed who gave the heart the understanding to distinguish between the day and night. So the word Lastechli is the word for rooster, but it's also the word for the heart and mind, and it comes from the book of Job. Who has the mind of understanding. So the poem or the meditation that Rabbi Schechter wrote for this one goes as follows. Now that I've awakened in the morning, I thank you, God, for restoring in me full consciousness so that I can tell the difference between day and night. I'm grateful for the unfailing human instinct that rouses me in the morning so that I can continue living. I appreciate that I can experience a new day with eyes now open so that I can see, and with a mind now clear so that I can think. So that was his kind of unpacking the word Bina, and I don't know if you've been in a situation when you wake up 4 in the morning, you hear the rooster, but that's what kind of made the inspiration for them to write this very first lesson. So that was just one of the 14, but that basically gives you a little sense that this comes from Talmud Brachot, page or daf 60b. So it's all in the Talmud where our rabbis wanted to make sure that we understand our relationship with God at all times, even when we wake up and we can't even. And we should be grateful that we can then distinguish between day and night.
Amen. Pastor Koch, thank you to you. Thank you, Rabbi Schechter. Thank you to the rabbis of the Talmud. Thank you to God for giving us something new to learn every day. We say gratitude in the words of Kaddish Rabbanan. We're on page 154. If you're joining us online, page 111. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah be'alma dibarah kirutei be'amlich ba'kirutei be'chayechon v'yomechon v'chaye v'chol beit Yisrael ba'agalah v'zman kari v'imru amen Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach be'olam olei olmaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal Shmei v'kudashah brichu Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata Shush v'chata v'nechamata Da'amiran v'alma v'imru amen Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Tamidehon ve'al kol Tamidei Tamidehon ve'al kol man ve'askin ve'oraita Di ve'atra hadein ve'di v'chol v'atar v'atar Yehei v'hon v'chon shlama rabba China v'chis v'rachamim v'chaim arichim zomer v'chei U'forkana min kodom amuhon v'bishmaya v'ara v'imru amen Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim tovim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen Osei shalom mimamav u'verachamav ya'asei shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. If you're able, please rise. We're going to turn forward to page 180. Page 180. If you're joining us online on page 122, for the beginning of the section of our service called Psukei Zimra, verses of song, and I will sing Baruch She'amar.
Baruch she'amar v'haya Baruch Hoseh Bereshit Baruch Omer Ve'oseh Baruch Gozer U'Kayim Baruch Merachem Ha'aretz Baruch Merachem Ha'abriyot Baruch Meshalem Sachato V'Recha Baruch Chai V'Kayam V'Esach Baruch Podeh U'Masihu Baruch Shem.
Yachid Chei HaOlamim Melech Meshubach V'Farayat Shemo HaGadol Baruch Atah Adonai Melech Melugal V'Ati Mishpacho. You may be seated. We're going to turn forward now to the final song. The last song in the book of Psalms is on page 194. On page 194. If you're joining us online, it's on page 141 for this final song. Thanking God for every breath that we have.
Hallelujah, 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 ki habuzo, hallelujah, 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 we glorify, hallelujah, 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 take a shofar, hallelujah, hallelujah, never let me know, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Kol neshama hallelujah, hallelujah.
Page 212. It's hard to, it's hard to find on the page. But if you turn to page 212, in this second paragraph, 4 lines down, is part of the song of the sea as we're crossing the Red Sea, and we're seeing the beauty of the idea that there is a new world ahead of us. One of the lines we sang was Ozi, Ozimat, yeah. Let me see. Okay.
Ozi, Ozimat, yeah.
When we sing it like that, it actually makes me feel like the echo of everybody walking through this canyon of water, trying to cross from Egypt, from death and slavery, into freedom, into wherever that is, the Sinai Peninsula, into the land of freedom, the land of wandering. I imagine if each person, each of the hundreds of thousands who walked through those waters, each said, wow, God is so mighty, that fills me with song. And if each person said it, would sound like this echo of each one as they enter the water and look up, oh, Ziva, yeah. And the next people walk, oh, Ziva, God, this echoing chorus of it. We turn forward to page 218, or from line, page 147, Shochin Ad.
Shochin Marom Bekadosh Shemo.
Shochin Marom Bekadosh Shemo.
Bechatu Praninu Tzadikim Baranai. Vaisharim Nahabatehila. Befi Yesharim Titana. Udivrei Tzadikim Titana. Uvilshon Hasidim Titroma. Ukekedoshim Titkadash. Umakarot Vivarot Ahabe Yisrael. Rinai Pa'ashimcha Makim. Echodor Vador. Shekecho Hatzorim Lefanecha Parnai Eloheinu Ve'Elokei Avotenu. Lehodot Lehaver Leshamech Lefaer Leromem Lechaber Levarech Le'aleh U'kaleh Zolko Divrei Shirot V'Tishbachot Davi Ben Yishar Lechamesh Shirecha Yishar Shimcha El HaMelech HaGadol v'HaKadosh Hashemayim u'ba'aretz Ki l'chaneh Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei Avotenu Shiru Shecha Halel v'Zivina Ozu Mem Shabbat Netzach Lahu Gvura Tehilahu Tiferet Kedusha u'machut Berachot ve'hodaot me'atam Baruch atah Adonai El melech gadol v'tishbachot El hahodaot Adon haniflaot הזוכר בשירי זימה, מלך אחרי העולמים.
Amen. Page 220 or line 148.
יקדש יקדש שמך.
Amen.
יעמוד ידרך ותן ימך נחותה. וחי יכול ביום יכול וחי בכל בית ישראל. הגבלה ישמן קולי ויאמרו
Amen.
כשני רבם לבורא לעולם לעולם. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא יתגר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי וקדושה. אלא מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תאמירה ואמה ותאמרו אמן.
If you're able, please rise. The official start of the morning service is on page 224. If you're joining us online, page 149. We face the ark.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yoseh oseh shalom borei et hakol.
You may be seated.
Six at the bottom. En ke'erecha Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh, ve'en zoracha makeinu lechayei ha'olam haba. Et esbirtecha gvaleinu v'imata Mashiach, ve'en dome lecha Moshiachenu
Turn to page 228 on line 151. El Adon.
El Adon HaKol HaMasim, Baruch Hu Olam V'Kol Neshama, Kavod V'Tuvo Elolam, Ta'atikuna Soveloto, Hamidah Ha'chayim Ka'kodesh, V'nehikah V'chavo, Al-HaMechama, Zechu V'Rishon V'Yisrael, Chesed V'Rachim V'Fecho, Tov V'Nechor Sh'Barach Eloheinu, Tzad V'Tach V'Bina V'Chaskel, Kol Ha'Ura Ya'ahem, V'Chol Roshon V'Kefecha, V'Lehi Tzvi V'Yimroda, V'Lehi Tzvi V'Chol HaKol, Smechim V'Tzedek V'Tzaddik V'Torah, V'Sivim V'Yimroda V'Tzokot, V'Erech HaKol V'Mishmor, Zechar V'Rina Zechar Kavod Hashemesh V'Yisrael, V'Ra'yim Surat HaRa'ah, She'arach Mu'minin Lo, Tzor HaRa'ah, Tiferet V'Ra'ah, Tzara'im V'Kohanim V'Chayim HaKol. Page 234. Tiparat Surenu, Malkene Gvaleinu, Borei Kedosh. Kulam Ahudim, Kulam Ukim, Kulam Giborim, Ve'kulam Osim, Ve'emara U'Yira Ratzon Kalam. וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה, ובטהרה בשירה ובשמחה, ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים את שם המלך המלך הגדול הגיבור וחנון הקדוש. וכולם כפרים עליהם, או מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונותנים רשות זה לזה, להקדיש ליוצרם בנחת רוח, ושפה ברוחה ובנימה קדושה, כולם כאחד עולים ואומרים ביראה. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלכו הארץ וגדול. רחמים חיות הקודש, ברעש גדול מתנשאים לעומת שרפים, לעומתה משבחים ואומרים, ברוך גדול אדוני. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה ואור. ברוך אתה אדוני, יוצר המאור. אהבה רבה תנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה יקרה. חמת עלינו, אבינו מלכנו, אהבנו אבותינו, שבחנו לך, שבחנו לך, אבינו מלכנו, ותענה חוקי חיים, כן תקננו תלמדנו, אבינו מלכנו, השכיר לשמור, ולגמור לשמור לעשור, וקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה. לך אמנו בתורתך, וקיימנו במצוותיך, והגענו ועבדנו, ואהבנו לרעך שמך, ולעולם בראש, לכל המערכת, ולעולם בראש, לכל המערכת, כי בשם קודשך הגדול הנורא ואנחנו נקריבה ונשמחה, נקריבה ונשמחה ישועתך.
On page 240, getting ready for Shema, which is on page 242 or on line 155. Those are in Talit. We find the corners if we can. Sometimes I have a hard time with that. Find the corners, disparate parts of ourselves, we wrap them around one finger, bring them all together. I'm prepared to say Shema.
The care of God, shaking Pagano, the whole of the heart, Baruch atah Adonai, Abocher b'nemo Yisrael b'chaim. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו חגים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננת על לבניך ודיברת בצדך ביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובנומך ובשבתם מאוד על ידיך, והיו לתותחות בעיניך וכתבתם על מצודות ביתך ולשמרך. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת אחריהם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בידיהם ודורתם ונעלו על ציצית הכנף ותלתכם והיה לכם וציוויתם אותו ושפרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטעו אחרי לבבכם ואחריהם אשר אתם צובעים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לבביכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם ודור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים וכיסו נכון, ומלכותו ואמונתו ועד כלם ולעולמים ועולמים. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו גואלנו אל אבותינו, יוסרנו צור ישועתנו פודנו ומצילנו מעולם שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך, צבאות אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם.
We'll continue just a moment on page 252 or online page 158, leading into Micha Mocha.
תהילות אל עליון ברכו וברך, משה בני ישראל לחנו שירה, בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם, מי כמוך בעדים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה דרך. שירה חדשה, שטחי גאולים לשמך, על שפת הים יחד כולם, הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני מלך לעולם ועד.
Please rise.
To Israel, to our Israel, Israel, look to Israel. Go hallelujah, so shino, Kedosh Israel,
The Amidah starts on page 255 or line 159. We'll do the first two pages together, then we can continue individually. When you're finished with your personal prayer, you may be seated.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor, HaNorah, Elohei נקדש את שמך בעולם, כי שם שמקדישים אותו לשמי מרום. ככתוב היה נביאך, יקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, אלוהי הארץ והארץ. אז בכל אשקדו, אדיר וחזק נשמיעו, ונשים לעומת שרפים, ומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך אדוני, ממך מכנו תופיע, ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לה. מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו, מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו, מתי תמלוך בציון, בקרוב בימינו, לעולם ועד, לעולם ועד תשכון. תקתדה, תקתדה, בתוך ירושלים, עירך לדור ודור, ולנצח נצחים, לעינינו תראינה, מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי הוזך. Ayede David, Ayede צריכים קדושתך להקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם תתן, כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Ose shalom bimama, kuyase shalom aleinu, v'hakol Yisrael, v'hinu hinu Yase shalom, Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, Yachol Yisrael. 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 Yase shalom. Yase shalom, shalom aleinu, Yachol Yisrael.
Page 268, or from line 167, Kaddish Shabbat.
Yikda Shamera.
Amen.
Yamami Barachute, Yamet Nachute, the Chayachon of Yamechon, Chayachon of Israel. Agalam Isman Karim Hindu.
Amen.
Yeshmera Hamevora. Vitar, Vitale, Vitala, Shemay, Purisha,
Brehu,
Ela, Vinko, Vikata, Vishirata, Tushtechata, Nechamata, Ta'amiram, Be'amah, Be'imru.
Amen.
Tikkabat, Slotahar, Tahar, Be'choy Yisrael, Kadama, Bahar, Bishmaya, Be'imru.
Amen.
Be'ishlamara, Ba'amin, Shemaya, Be'chayim, Aleinu, Be'akor Yisrael, Be'imru.
Amen.
Aseh Shalom, B'imramaha, B'yaseh Shalom. Aleinu, Be'akor Yisrael, Be'imru. Amen.
Thank you very much, Bill. Welcome back to our Lima Woodland Kepke. So glad you're able to join us up here. First time meeting Shacharit in a while, so
First time, quite a while.
in quite a while. So thank you very much for that. We'll begin our Torah service now on page 312 or online, page 168. We invite our Baal Tefillah, Benny Sommerfeld, back up onto the Lima to lead us from the Torah service.
En Kamocha Elohim Adonai, Ben Kemasecha, Malevutecha Malchut Kol Olamim, Umensaltecha Be'ol Dor V'Dor. Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Eloh, Le'olam Va'ed, Adonai Oz Le'amo Yigdei, Adonai Yivarech et Amo V'Shalom, Avarachim, Eitiv V'Mitzvoncha, Esiyon, Tivnei Komod Yerushalayim, Tivnei Komod Yerushalayim, Melech Elam V'Nisa, Adon Olamim.
Miles, can we invite you up to open the ark and take a Sefer Torah out? Those who are able, please rise. Are you prepared to do so?
Vayehi mitzvah Aaron vayomer Moshe, V'ma Adonai v'yachuzu oivecha, v'yachuzu metanecha mipanecha, ki Zion tetzei Torah, ki Zion tetzei Torah, v'levar Adonai miYerushalayim, Baruch She'amad Torah, Baruch She'amad Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, Kedushato. Page 360. Ve'anara ve'lish me'ganisha,ganisha yakira, anara
I got to Shabbat Shalom, the middle aisle people. So Shabbat Shalom to the side people, and Shabbat Shalom to the online people. But I didn't get to give you a little elbow there. This morning I was thinking about the movie Adaptation. You see this movie? 20 years ago? Adaptation is kind of the story of Charlie Kaufman, the writer, trying to figure out how to adapt an article from the New Yorker about orchids into a movie. And he's trying to figure out, and if you haven't seen it, it's a fascinating, it's just an interesting movie, I thought. Trying to figure out how do you adapt something like that into a movie. You try to figure out where do you start. And I think about that because of where we are in the Torah at the beginning. And if you were writing the Torah, or somebody were telling you about the Torah, where do you think it would start? Or where would you start the Torah? I'm opening it up to actual question. Where would you start the Torah? In the beginning of what? I mean, in the beginning is a great, you know. So Benny says Moses' life. That was at chapter 2 of Shemot, of the book of Exodus. It's a good place to start. In the beginning, there was a prophet named Moses. When he was a baby, this is an interesting place to start our story. We have no real mitzvot. This is a book of laws. We have no real laws in the book of Genesis. It really starts in the book of Exodus. So if you were to say, what's the story of the Jewish people? We were slaves in the beginning, we were slaves in Egypt. And then there was and Pharaoh was angry and said all the male babies have to be thrown into the river, and there was one mother who saved her baby. That's a great place to start. And I think if somebody said, tell me the story of the Jewish people, you might start there. Gary.
But you need to know how we ended up in Egypt.
So how did you end up in Egypt? That's how you say, I mean, and you could say, long ago we were nomadic people, and there were brothers, and they were in a dream, and they threw their brother in a pit, and and you get there. No.
Well, how did God get into the equation?
How does God get into the equation? What do you mean?
If you start with Moses, how did
If you start with Moses, where does Moses' relationship to God and to the Israelite people?
Yeah, God's relationship to the people at that point in time.
So that's amazing. Right, to tell our story is maybe to start with Moses. And maybe to start a little bit before Moses, because you got to explain how we got there to begin with. But maybe you have to understand why we have a relationship with God at all. God wants to take us out of the land of Egypt, out of bondage and slavery, into freedom. Why else? You have to start with Abraham. So if you're going to tell the story of the Jewish people, you can either tell from the Midrash perspective or from the Torah perspective. God found this man named Avram and his wife Sarai and said, Lech lecha. We'll get there next week. Right, and that's an interesting place to start. The first Jew, the first one to hear God's calling in an ethical way and say, I want you to be a blessing. The first one to be a partner with God in a successful way. We have, and if you're online, you can press the button to raise your hand. I can't see everybody at once, but we can see if people online can throw it in, or just unmute and shout at me. But Benny.
So then you can start with Noah, because Noah, in a way, restarted everything with a covenant with God. This was the first time God made a covenant with the people.
So it could start, I mean, it seems like you all planned this, right? Planned to do some kind of, oh, we start with Moses. Let's start with right before Moses. You're all working backwards here, which is great. And so so maybe you start with Noah. God wanted a partner on earth. And God found the most righteous man at the time, and his name was Noah. And God says to Noah, I need a partner on the ground. And right now, there's just evil in the world. Will you be the one to restart humanity with me? Interesting. Is that starting our story? If somebody said explain the Jews, do you start with Noah?
Yeah.
You might start with Noah. You might say, you have to understand, God was looking for a partner. God had the most righteous man. His name was Noah. We're all descendants of Noah, except that Noah didn't do enough, which is why we're not the name Noah, not the children of Noah. Except for all of humanity essentially is.
That's not what we learned. We learned that that he wasn't the first Jew.
No, it wasn't the right. In Hebrew school class, I remember being a kid in Hebrew school, they would ask us, and who was the first Jew? You'd just say, Abraham. And I would say, Abraham and Sarah were the first Jews. Except that the story of, so we don't say Noah was the first Jew. Noah believed, it seems, in one God. Noah was a monotheist. So why wasn't Noah the one?
It had to start somewhere. And it was already creation. generation by the time Noah came into the story.
But why are we not going to know? Why are we called Noah the first Jew? Why? And I don't have a right answer. I've got some ideas. I don't have the right answer on this. I turn to you because you're smarter than I am.
God didn't have kind of covenantal relationship with Noah.
There wasn't this covenantal relationship with Noah that there was with Abraham. It seems like God tried. And there was even this breach, this covenant that we call a rainbow. And one book I read this week was like, imagine a world before any entertainment, before drive-in movie theaters and radio shows. A rainbow is enough to keep you entertained for a very long time. It's a great show. Benny.
I think that the Tower of Babel was kind of the reason why it can't start. They have a covenant with God, but they still thought that they could be God by building the Tower of Babel. But after that, when God kind of made the 70 nations and the languages they could understand, then all of that idea just disappeared. In a sense, that we could be God. Now, polytheists didn't do it, or it came. I mean, Abraham set the record straight.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the issue wasn't Noah. The issue was the generations after Noah who just didn't get this covenant. God made a covenant with Noah. You will be my leader. All of my children will come from you. They will trace their lineage to you. Be my partner. And Noah says, okay. But Noah's descendants don't heed that call. And they think it's important to have form-fitting bricks and have form-fitting people who fit this form-fitting life. And if you stray outside of it, if you wander at all, then you're not. And they kick people out. And that dissolved that idea of a covenant with God. That's it. Beautiful read. Gary.
So the question then becomes, well, what's Noah's backstory?
Right, so we got to get to Noah's back. How do we get to Noah? If we say, all right, the story starts with Noah, we got to get Noah's backstory. Who was Noah? Was Noah the first person? Was that? And this, and I talked about this, I think, on Yom Kippur. It's like when I asked my dad a very simple question when I was a kid. I used to go to Hebrew school in Encino, and so Hebrew school coming home from Encino on a rainy day, back when we used to get rain in LA, on a rainy day from Encino to Agora, and I'd get car sick the whole way and stop and go traffic for those 20 miles at rush hour. And I asked a simple question as we get into the car in Encino. And I felt like most dads would have finished the answer before we got onto the freeway at Haskell. My dad, when we got home, he was still going, well, you have to understand. And, like I was going to play Annie when I was a kid. And one of the last songs in Annie, I think, is We're Getting a New Deal for Christmas. And FDR is on stage, which is usually like one of the poor actors who, they put him in a wheelchair, they put a blanket over his legs, they go, you're FDR. And, like, that's all he could do. And that was, and like, I thought, like, oh, we're just singing this song. My dad goes, well, you have to understand. All right. So, and we explained the New Deal to this 8-year-old sitting in a car, driving from Encino to Aurora. And so this is like what it's like. Somebody says, tell me how Judaism started. Well, Moses, hang on. Joseph, hang on. Jacob, hang on. Abraham, give me a second. Tower of Noah, wait, hey, before that. All right, so God, and this is the movie adaptation. He's trying to figure out how to explain the importance of orchids to this one hillbilly in Florida. And he goes, to understand orchids, you have to understand the creation of the universe. You have to understand the Big Bang, and you have to understand everything that comes after it, and how dinosaurs, to understand an orchid, you have to understand how creation happens. And here we are too, this book is our book of love. This book is our book of stories of who we are as a people, and how we escaped slavery and became a free people, and why we deserve a little tiny piece of oilless land in the middle of surrounded by enemies and oil and things like that. And the answer seems to be, you have to go way, way, way back to the very beginning. This is where we are now. Today we're going to finish this idea of kind of prehistory. The first couple of stories in the Torah are creation and the Garden of Eden, and then the 10 generations from Adam to Noah, and then, or Adam and Eve to Noah, and then Noah and the flood, and then the 10 generations from Noah to Abram and Sarai. And we go through these 20 generations to try to understand who we are and what our starting place is. So these global stories are going to end with this morning's reading, and we segue very quickly, very quietly, into the story of Abraham and Sarah. We'll continue that story for the next couple of weeks, but the end of the Torah reading is about Abraham and Sarah, and there's this cross section between God creating a world. And I wonder if at this point, because last week we read that God's heart was sad, the fact that humanity wasn't good. You wonder at what point did God go, I'm not great at creating worlds or humans or however we define. And God looks at Adam and Eve and that's a failure, looks at Cain and Abel and that's a failure, and looks at Noah and that doesn't seem to work out, looks at 10 generations later and that doesn't work out. Like, what point does God go, I am barren and unable to have children? And we see God's story echoed then at the end of this week's parsha with Sarah, who we don't know how long she and Abraham have been married. We don't know how long they've been trying. We don't know what kind of issues they've had. We don't know what kind of experts they've seen, what kind of potions they drank. And Sarah is barren. She ends up having a kid, so she's not, but here she is. And is Sarah's story mirroring God's story? God thinks that God is barren. Am I just unable to produce a healthy child? And Sarah has this same issue until she's 90, which seems old to us now. I've never heard of a 90-year-old pregnant lady now. But in the same chapter, a few verses earlier, you have people having children at 430 years old. So and that's when we get from like this outrageous, again, living 969 years to more within our time frame of living in the low triple digits. Steve, I saw Miles, your hand.
Maybe by the time of Abraham, God had realized that he needs a partner to help hear the word about monotheism, well, rather than just dictating it to everybody. So he selected a specific people, group of people who would openly become Jews.
So it's you're saying it's not about God trying to talk to the whole world, but God trying to talk to one person, and really trying to convince that one person to perpetuate this. Because to talk to the whole world, that doesn't seem to work. To talk to just Noah, it's just one person, that doesn't seem to work because the covenant's with Noah. And Noah's sons who are on that boat are not part of this conversation. But with Abraham, it's Abraham, tell all your people, you have servants, you have children, tell them, bring them into this covenant. Even Ishmael, who we're not going to go into right now, even he gets circumcised. Even Eliezer, your servant, even he gets, they're part of this covenant. And to say each generation after you, you have to bring them in. It's not just Noah making covenant with you, and we're done. It's, okay, we have to keep this going. Except 3 or 5 or however many thousands of years later, we can sit 1,000 notes and be part of this covenant because the door by door we pass it down to each generation. By saying it just to Noah, that doesn't work. By trying to teach your children to teach their children works better. And maybe being active in that too. Well, thank you for being part of this discovery conversation. We're going to have an interesting Torah reading this morning. First of all, you can put your blue book away. We're opening up our Etzchaim Chumash to page 58. We're at the beginning of chapter 11 of Bereshit, of this book of Genesis. We've finished the story of Noah, but it's still Parshat Noah. We're into the story of the Tower of Babel, which, despite the fact that there's beautiful ideas in this story, it's only a few sentences long. And we have Torah readers from at least a couple of different states. So I'm so excited to call on some of my dear friends to read Torah with us today. Helene, you are a Kohen. Can we call you up for the first Aliyah? V'ya'azor v'yagen v'yoshilako hakosiko v'nomar amen hakol havuko delohim v'atorah ta'amod. Ta'amod chaya batzara u'minyanim hakohen Baruch Shantam Torah Yisrael b'kedushato v'atem hamikim b'Elohechem chayim kulchem hayom.
Et Adonai Hamorah.
Baruch Adonai Amborach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayhi kol haaretz sefat echad, udvarim achadim. Vayhi benas amikadam, vayimtzeu bik'ah, be'eretz sinar, vayeshvu sham, vayomru ish el re'ehu, havat nilbana levenim, v'nisrefa, lisrefa, Vaytehi lehem halvena leavan v'hachemar haya lehem lechomer vayomru havaniv lelanu ir umigdal v'rosho b'shamayim v'na'aseh lanu shem penafutz al penei kol haaretz.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah Emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Thank you, Helene, and thank you, Robin Miller, for reading the first Aliyah. You're so good. Can you please read the second Aliyah for us as well? Do we have a lady here? No, lady Eve. We're not supposed to do this, but I'll call it a second Kohen, as that works as well. So we'll call up Gary for this second Aliyah. Ya'amod Shefel ben Yitzchak Kohen, the golden arrow, shady.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach.
Baruch Adonai Amborach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayirat Adonai lirot et ha'ir ve'et hamigdal asher banu b'nei ha'adam. Vayomer Adonai en am echad v'safa echad likulam v'zeh hachilam la'asot ve'ata lo yibatzer mehem kol asher yizmu la'asot. Hava nirda v'navla sham sifatam asher lo yishmeu ish sifat re'ehu v'yafet Adonai otam misham al penei kol haaretz v'yachdelu livnot ha'ir al ken kara shema Bavel kisham belal Adonai Sefat kol haaretz umisham hafitzam Adonai al penei kol haaretz.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah Emet v'yolam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. For the third Aliyah, the Friedmans, can you come up and bless us here with the third Aliyah? Ya'amdu Simcha Zulu ben Shmaryahu Mina Chaya Badava Sara Shlishi. If you're following along, we're at verse 10, which is on page 50, page 60. I want to thank Robin once again for reading Torah for us. Really beautifully.
Baruch et Adonai Habarach. Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Emet Torot Shem Ben Be'al Shana Yoled Et Arba Shad Shnai Ar Hamabul Vayechi Shem Acharei Holido Et Arba Shad Chamesh Me'od Shana Vayoled Bani Ubanot Arba Shad Nechai Chamesh U'Shloshim Shana Vayoled Et Shelach Vayechi Arba Shad Rehalido et Shelach Shalosh Shani Barba Me'ot Shana Vayoled Banim Ubanot.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet. V'chayei olam nata b'dorkeinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
We got the Mitchells up for the fourth Aliyah. And I forget every week between Shabbos and Shabbos for to send an email to the people whose names I don't have written down, so that I can call them at some point as well. Ya'amdu Bat Sarah Raphael ben Abraham Rabbi
Baruch et Adonai Habarach.
Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Habarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. Shelach Chai Shloshim Shana Yoled Et Ever Vayechi Shelach Acharei Holido Et Ever Shalosh Shanim Barba Me'ot Shana Vayoled Banim Ubanot Vayechi Ever Arba'a U'Shloshim Shana Yoled Et Peleg Vayechi Ever Acharei Holido Et Peleg Shloshim Shana Barba Me'ot Shana Vayoled Banim Ubanot.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet. V'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
For the fifth Aliyah, we call up David and Barbara. And we're going through the list of generations between I guess the Tower of Babel all the way down to Abraham, we'll get to in just a couple of verses. Ya'amdu David ben Shlomo ben Batya bat Shimon Chamishi. Baruch Hashem Barak Le'olam Va'ed. Amen.
Amen. Vayechi Feleg 30 Shana, Vayolet et Reu. Vayechi Feleg Acharei Holido et Reu. Tesha Shanim U'Matayim Shana, Vayolet Banim U'Banot. Vayechi Reu 32 Shana, Vayolet et Serug. Vayechiru acharei holido et Serug 7 shanim u'matayim shana vayolet banim u'banot.
Amen. Patty, can we call you up for the 6th Aliyah? Ta'amod Chayamalka Bat Hesh Overucho She.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher barach banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayechi Serug 30 shana, Vayolet et Nachor. Vayechi Serug acharei holido et Nachor 200 shana, Vayoldo banim u'banot. Vayechi Nachor 29 shana, Vayolet et Tarach. Vayechi Nachor acharei holido et Tarach 19 shana u'me'at shana, Vayolet banim u'banot.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tachenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Thanks for talking about Barbara. Thanks for Patty comes in. And Cheryl, can you stay here and follow along with the Torah? Sure. Thank you. For the 7th Aliyah, can we invite Buzz and Nomi up here to together have the 7th Aliyah? Ya'amdu Yisrael ben Sion ve'Hava ve'Omi Ba'er Shovet Tova Shvi'i. We'll turn online to Rachel Laban reading Torah for us.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher barach banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayechi Terach 70 shana, Vayoled et Avram et Nachor ve'et Haran, ve'ele toldot Terach. Terach holid et Avram et Nachor ve'et Haran, ve'Haran holid et Lot. Vayamat Haran al Panei Terech Aviv, Be'eretz Moladeto Be'or Kasdim, Vayikach Avram V'Nachor Lahem Nashim, Shem Eshet Avram Sarai V'Shem Eshet Nachor Milka, Bat Haran Avi Milka Va'avi Yiska, Vati Sarai Akara, Ein La Valad, Vayikach Terach Et Avram Beno, Ve'et Lot Ben Haran Ben Beno Ve'et, Sarai Kalato Eshet Avram Beno, Vayetzu Itam, Meur Kasdim, Lalechet Artsa Kenaan, Vayavo Ad Haran, Vayeshvu Sham, Vayush Yemei Terach, Chamesh Shanim Umatayim Shana, Vayamat Terach Becharan.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Mikdash v'mitkadash shemei bava, Elma nivra kibrutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechom v'yomechom, u'chayei lechol Beit Yisrael, v'gala v'gala, u'bizman kari v'meru. Amen. Yehi Shrei Rabba Mevorach, Le'olam Olam Le'omaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, Yitba'ar, Yitramam, Yitnaseh, Yithadar, Yit'aleh, Yithalal, Shemei B'Kudeshah, Le'elam, Kol Katav Shirata, Tushbechata Menechemata, Da'aniram Be'alma, Ve'imeru. Amen. We'll say Misha Berach now, a prayer of healing in between the Torah reading and the volunteer. If you have names to add, whether you're online or you're here in person, please feel free to add names to our list. Misha Berach, Avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Avotenu Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Vivarech, Vivarpei Tacholim, Menucha bat Necha, Shalom ben Rivka, Rivka bat Sarah, Adam ben Chava, Hannah bat Chava, Moshe ben Fela, Lezer ben Chava, Moshe ben Yehudit, Yaakov ben Moshe, Yehudit bat Sarah, Imenu, Tali bat Sarah, Zipporah bat Leah, Sarah Fega bat Esther Usha, Yehudit, Blum bat Sarah, Avi Ari ben Chana, Rivka bat Sarah, Miriam bat Dorit, Yosef ben Devorah, Baruch ben David, Harav Chaim Yaakov ben Pesha, Dora bat Golda, Yehudit bat Sarah, Yocheved Miriam bat Esther, Pinchas ben Tzvia, Gabriela bat Ayala, Ayelet bat Simon, John Ogle, Debbie Jacoby, Jessica Jacoby, Bobby Sachs, Cassandra Hosher, Shirley Rutkovitz, Alex Sanderson, Vivian Sterling, Aharon ben David, Razel bat Ruth, Reuven ben Brana, Harav Tzivia, Chana bat Sarah, Leah Chana bat Yarena, Israel, Abraham ben Fega, Yonatan ben Rivka, Abraham Menashe ben Simcha, Yosef ben Esau, Shema bat Basha, Abraham ben Vida, Bracha bat Miriam, Rivka bat Enya, Sarah bat Esther, Chava Fredo bat Ira Noga. Yes. Sure.
Hanamichal bat Chaviva, Katya Basha bat Ramona, Hannah Rupel bat Yudit, Elliot and Dorina, Robin Lund, Samir.
about China, coming on much as well. Rising of the world.
Patty?
Ari ben Dorit and Jonathan ben Yehudit.
Thank you, Patty. Debbie and Les?
Laser Ben Chava and Pinkus Ben Celia. I forgot. Thank you.
ואת כל החולים בקהילתנו הקדוש ברוך הוא ורחמים עליהם, החזיקם ורבותם וישלח להם מהרה רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, בתוך שאר החולים, לחזק ויחזקים צורכיהם, שבת ולזאת רפואה קרובה לו, השתל העגלה ובזמן קריב, ונאמר אמן. God, of all of those who came before us, please bring blessings of healing and kindness to those who need it most. We don't ask for much on Shabbat. We try not to ask God to do any work, but we know that disease and discomfort don't take a rest on Shabbat. So we pray that they get better and feel stronger and are taken care of by people who are good at their jobs and love them very much. We now call up for the Maftir of Lisa Ivan. Ta'amod, 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 le'ita bat aridov, ha'kohen ve'hinda fega, maftira chazaka. If you're following along, we're on page 62 at verse 29, we turn back to Rachel Laban out in the suburbs of Chicago to read the Maftir Aliyah for us.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayikach Avraham v'Nachor lahem nashim shem eshet Avram Sarai v'shem eshet Nachor Milka bat Haran avi Milka va'avi Yiska v'tehi Sarai akara ein lach valad vayikach Terach et Avram beno ve'et Lot ben Haran ben beno ve'et Sarai kalato eshet Avram beno vayetzu itam me'ur kasdim lalech Arza Kenaan, Vayavo Ad Haran, Vayishvu Sham, Vayu Yemei Tarach, Chamesh Shanim, Umatayim Shana, Vayamatarach Becharan.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Temet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Those who are able, please rise. We lift and dress the Sefer Torah. I'll invite Miles up here to lift the Torah. And Candy, you want to come dress the Sefer Torah for us? Ya'amod ha'alabiyah ta'amod ha'aleret the Sefer Torah.
Vezot HaTorah Asher Moshe B'nei B'nei Yisrael Torah, 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 Tziva Lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva Lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva Lanu Moshe. Torah, Torah, Torah,
may be seated. Thank you once again to our Torah readers who joined me in reading Torah, to Cheryl Wolf, and to my friend Robin Miller, who joined us from Arizona, and my friend Rachel Layton, who joined us from Illinois. It's nice that we are able to rely still on Zoom, and therefore that we can bring in people from around the world. If you have friends or family anywhere else in the world who you think wants to join us by reading Torah or just being part of our service, they are welcome to do so and join us in that way. The Haftarah, once again, from the book of Yeshayahu, the book of Isaiah, starts on page 65. We invite Lisa up here to chant the Haftarah for us that echoes the idea of Noah. Hey, I'm just keeping talking to you up here. We'll be on page 65.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar bim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'Torah u'Moshe avdo Yisrael amo u'b'nbiei ha'emet b'tzedek rani yakara lo yalada pitzchi rina v'tzali lo chala ki rabim b'nei shomema mibnei ve'ula amar Adonai Archivi mekom halev miriot mishkanotayich yatu al tasochi ha'arichi metarayich v'tedotayich azeki ki aminu smol tifrotzi Bezareh goyim yirash v'arim neshamot yoshivu alteri ki lo tevoshi v'alti kalmi ki lo tachpiri ki voshet alumayich tishkachi v'herpad al menutayich lo tizkari od Ki vo alayich hasayich Adonai tzvaot shemo v'goalech kedosh Yisrael Elohecho haaretz yikareh ki heisha atzuvat ruach kira'ach Adonai Eshet neurim kitima es amar Elohai arega katon azavti rachamim gedolim akabtzeh v'shetzef ketzef istarti anai rega mimeh Chesed, chesed olam, richamti, amar go aleh, Adonai, ki me Noach zot li, asher nishbati, me avor me Noach, od al haaretz, ke nishbati, Miktzov alayich umigarpa ki harim yamushu hagbaot timutena chasti meita lo yamud uvrich lo mihilo tamud amahar mirachameh Adonai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sur kol olamim Sadiq Bechol Hadorot, Ha'el Haneman, Ha'omer V'Yosef, Hamdaber U'Kayem, Shekol Devarav Emet Batzedek, Ne'eman Atahu Adonai Eloheinu, V'Ne'emanim Devarecha, V'Devarecha Mivarecha, Achor Lo Yashuv Brekam, Ki Emelech Ne'eman V'Rachaman Ata, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ha'el Haneman Bechol Devarav, Rachem Al Tzion Ki Beit Chayenu, V'la Aluvat Nefesh Toshia B'mheira B'yameinu, Baruch Ata Adonai, Misameach Tzion B'vanecha. Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu Beliahu Hanavi Avdecha U'malchut Beit David Meshichecha B'mheira Yavo V'yagel Libeinu Al Kisa Lo Yeshev Zar V'lo Yimchalu Od Aperim Et Kivodo Ki V'shem Kodecha Nishbata Lo Shelo Yichben Neimro Le'olam Va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Magen David Al HaTorah, V'al HaAvodah, V'al HaMi'im, V'al Yom HaShabbat Hazeh, Shenatata Lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, L'Kedusha V'Limincha, L'Chavod U'Tifaret, Al HaKol, Adonai Eloheinu, Anachnu Modim Lav, U'Barchim Otah, Yitbarach Shimcha B'fi Kol Chai, Tamid Le'olam Va'ed, Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for being here. She could have been anywhere in the world, and she was here with us. So appreciate that. And I actually, as you were reading it, I based on our conversation this morning, I read it differently. That it starts off by saying, essentially, the barren one will have a child, will have offspring, and to read it now differently as God being that character, the one who thought nothing will come of me. I can't make a partnership with humanity. I've been trying for 20 generations, and it never works. I have nobody who's my offspring. And then at the end of the Parsha, we actually get this introduction to Avram and Sarai. And this is now the one who has a reason to shout, because good things will spread throughout the whole world. So thank you, Lisa, for reading that for us. We close our Red Etzchaim Chumash. We open up our prayer books again. We're on page 336, or if you're online, we're on page 181, as Benny and I read Ashrei.
Asher Beitech Onyalu Chasela.
Ashrei ha'am shekachalo, Ashrei ha'am shadonai k'ramah.
ובילת לדוד, הרמית היה מלך, ואחשת לעולם ועד.
וכל יום אברכך, בעבר שמך לעולם ועד.
כל אדוני אמונה מאוד, ולגדולתו אין עקר.
דון אדוני ישבח מעשיך, וגבולותיך יגידו.
הדר כבודותיך, ודברי נכתך עשית.
ועזוז נורותיך יאמרו, וגבולתך אספרנה.
ספר רבך יביאו, צדקך ירננו.
חנון רחמו אדוני, ערך אבנו דו חסד.
וברנו לך, ברחבה מקום עשה.
ירדוך אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידיך יברכוך.
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, וגבורתך ידברו.
והודיע לי בידם גבורותיו, כבוד אדם מלכותו.
מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך לכל ברור.
שונאך אדוני לכל הנופלים, זוקף לכל הכפופים.
עיני כל אליך יסברו, ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם בעיתו.
לוקח את ידיך, מסביר לכל הרצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו.
לכל גבורה, כל אשר יקראו באמת.
רצון יראיו יעשה, ואת שבתיו ישמע ויושיע.
שומר את כל אוהביו, ואת כל הרשעים ישמיד.
תפילת אדוני ידבר פי, לברך כל בשר שם קודשו ולברך.
אנחנו נברך
מעתה ויעבור.
If you're able, please rise and prepare to put the Sefer Torah back in the Aron Kodesh.
יהללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו. עולו על ארץ ושמיים, וירם כרם לימו. תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל.
We remain standing for the Musaf service. Page 354 is Chatzi Kaddish, or if you're joining us online, page 184 will lead us into the Musaf Amidah.
יתגדל ויתגדל שמי הבא.
Amen.
אמר דברה חירותי ימלך מלכותי. וחיי כל יומך וחיי לכל בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רב
ויתעלה שמי קודשה בריבו ואלוהיכו ברכתה ושירתה תושבעתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמה וימרו אמן. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Elohei Hagadol Hagibor Vehanora El Elyon Global Chazanim Tovim Vekonei Hakol Vezocher Karsei Avot Umedino El Ibneihem Leman Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magid Avraham Bezrat Sarah אתה גיבור לעניים מחיי ביתי, אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מקלקל חיים בחסד, מחיי ביתי ברחמים רבים, שומר נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מלחמות כמה גבורות ומדמריו, מלך מגיד ומקיים ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמרת לחיות ביתי, וברוך אתה אדוני וחיי המתים.
נעריצך ונכפישך בסוד שיח צרכי קודש, המכפישים שימך בקודש, הכתוב על יד נביאך, וכרזה אל זה ואמר.
נעריצך ונכפישך בסוד שיח צרכי קודש, המכפישים שימך בקודש, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וכרזה אל זה ואמר. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech haaretz kevodo.
כבודו עלי עולם, ושעריו שואלים דלעדי עין, וכל כבודו מלכם ברוך ימינו.
Kevodo mלא עולם, ושעריו שואלים דלעדי עין, מקום כבודו. לעומתם, ברוך יאמרו, ברוך יבוא אדוני ממקום.
במקומו ויפן ורחמים ויחון עם יחדים שמו, ערב ובוקר בכל יום תמיד, אמן וחווה שמה אומרים.
במקומו ויפן ורחמים ויחונה עם יחדים שמו, ערב הבוקר בכל יום תמיד, המים ויחפה שמה אומרים. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו, ורק Shalom Vimroa Uyase Shalom Shalom Aleinu Ve'akol Yisrael Ve'akol Yoshvei Tevel Ve'imru
If you're still praying, please continue. We're on page 398 when you're ready to join us, or online, page 203.
יתגלה ויתגלה שמי רבה,
אמן.
ועמד ולהכרותיו ימליך מלכותיו וחייכונו ויומיכונו וחיי כל בית ישראל, ועגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה נבורך, לעולם עולם והוויה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קודשה ראו לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה נאמירה בימה ואמרו אמן. תתקבל צורתהון ובדהון וכל ישראל כולם ומון ושמיה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רב מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
We turn the page for Ein Eloheinu.
Ein Eloheinu, Ein Eloheinu, Ein Eloheinu, Ein Moshiachenu, Mich Eloheinu, Mich Adonenu, Mich Eloheinu, Mich Moshiachenu. Nod Eloheinu, Nod Adonenu, Nod Eloheinu, Nod Moshiachenu. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshiachenu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshiachenu, Atahu Shekiru, Avoteinu, Lefanecha et Ketorah Nasaim.
If you're able, we rise, page 402 or online 205.
Aleinu לשמח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמזבחות נאמן, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ ומושל יקרו בשמיים
ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ היום ההוא והיום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
You may be seated. This week, this first full week of Cheshvan, our community remembers Sylvia Kurtz, Raymond Mendelson, William Rosen, Dorothy Shotland, Leonard Schwartz, William Harold Sherman, Louis Tischler, Sajjad Hussein, Leslie Mack, Sinclair Shippo, William Block, Boris Dolgen, Paul Greenberg, Jacob Levine, Jack Leibowitz, Lillian Morley, Celia Shear Abel, Melvin Wolf, Sidney Bresla, Aaron Michael Graham, Norbert Jallings, Florence Saraboff, Lottie Safa, William Zlot, Mary Abramson, Donald Adelson, Mosel Baruch, Renee Fraser, Rose Goldberg, Alex Kagan, Rose Oakham, Leroy Haller, Kenyon Rosenberg, Shirley Thorner, Rose Axelrad, Bernie Cohen, Frank Ellman, Irving Friedman, Muriel R. Shearer, Alexander Semler, Morris Tooby, Seymour Eidman, Abraham Friedman, Daniel C. Gilson, Morris Karkoff, Lillian Clapper, Molly Croyne, Richard Landau. And remember the beautiful ones. Is there anybody either wanting to add a name or share a memory of who they are here to say Kaddish for? Oh, Rebecca, I see your hand now.
I think Rebecca volunteered me to say a little about my dad. So my dad was kind of a lifelong teacher. He taught elementary school. He taught religious school, and he taught arts and crafts at Jewish summer camps. And some of the things that I took from my father was a love of reading, a love of education, and a love of art.
Thank you, David. Thank you for sharing that with us today. Others want to volunteer somebody else to tell the story? May all our memories be really beautiful ones. If there's anybody online, I just don't see their hand, you can just unmute and start speaking. Those in a period of mourning or observing a yard site are welcome to rise on page 410 or online page 207 for the words of Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rava Be'alma Divara Kirute V'amlich Malchute V'chayechon V'yomechon V'chaye Yechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala U'bizman Kariv Mimru Amen Yehi Shemei Rava Mevorach Ve'olam Olei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh Yithadar V'yit'aleh V'yit'alal Shemei V'yitkusha V'yitlu La'ela Min Kol Berchata V'shirata Tushbachata V'nechamata Ta'amiram Be'alma V'yimru Amen Yehi Shlama Rava Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen Osei Shalom B'mirma Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. You may be seated. Thank you, Benny, and thank you, Bill, for leading us this morning in our services. Thank you, Lisa, for chanting Haftarah for us. You said you've been doing this one. Is this your Bat Mitzvah Haftarah?
First time he had said.
Okay, right. This is the Haftarah for this morning. The long version is actually two separate Haftarot that were put together. We go through those other times of the year. So Ki Tetzei is the first half. Yeah. And you read that for your Bat Mitzvah. That's wonderful. Glad you can come back up here and essentially from memory do it so fluidly. That's wonderful. And thank you to our Torah readers this morning, to Cheryl, to Rachel, and to Robin. Just to note, first of all, Rachel and Robin are sisters, and they both read Torah. So I asked them both yesterday if they could read Torah for us, knowing that they were online, we were missing some people, and one said yes, and one said no. And I was kind of scrambling for, and then it turns out that one of our other Torah readers canceled last minute, right before Shabbos canceled, and Rachel texted me right before Shabbos and said, my plans canceled, read Torah if you like. And so we just had this merging of things, and so thank you to my friends from Chicago and for their sisters for bringing some Torah to us. And thank you all for being here and participating. Tonight at 7:30, we have Havdalah online, a nice 5 or 10 minutes of just saying goodbye to Shabbos together. Tomorrow morning in this room and online, 8:30 a.m., we'll be welcoming in the new week with some Shacharit brachot and Hebrew school and women of TEC membership luncheon and men's club, watching the rabbis play football with each other. Is that right?
We didn't tell you all the things.
I'm very nervous, and I look forward to all of you teaching me what football is. And then the rest of the week. So hopefully we'll see something Judaic and something social and something nice this week. Adon Olam?
Yeah.
Okay, we're on page 412 or online, page 211, Adon Olam.
Adon Olam Asher Ma'ala V'ter Kol Yetzir Nivra Leit Nasa Me'Chem Zogod Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'Yakaveh Kidrot HaKol Levado Yimlok Torah Ve'hu Haya Ve'hu Ve'hu Yeh Ve'tifara Ve'hu Yeh Ve'tifara Ve'hu Echad Ve'im Sheni Le'am Shilo Le'hachira Ve'li'reshi Ve'li'tachlit Ve'lo ha'oz ve'ha'mizrach Ve'lo ha'oz ve'ha'mizrach Ve'hu eti ve'kai go'ali Ve'tzur hevli ve'etzara Ve'hu nisi Omanosli Ve'nakosi Ve'yom ekra Ve'nakosi Ve'yom ekra Ve'yado Achidruki Ve'etisha Ve'ayira